Crown Royal, Crown everything. Let's bring him in, our generous guy of the day, presented by Crown Royal, Dom Luszczyszyn. And Dom, do you know that there is a video on YouTube of you pronouncing your own name?
One sec, he's grabbing headphones.
There he is.
I'm very sorry. I saw that you guys were going to do an ad read, and then I'm like, I have time. Should I get headphones? Harm's like, yes. And then
Nice one, Harm. You got the flying skate hat on.
I sure do.
Did you have to go buy that right before the show?
No, I've had it since I think last year. I have like 10 different teams or so. I don't know if you guys saw the tweet from earlier in the year where my dog ate my Devils hat. She luckily did not eat this one. So I'd wear it to this show.
That's awesome. Dom, thank you so much for taking the time today. The question on every Canucks fan's mind, why do you hate Quinn Hughes?
It's a great question, obviously. I don't hate Quinn Hughes at all. I will tell a little story about my fantasy hockey league where before the season started, I was desperately trying to acquire Quinn Hughes. There was this guy in my league who trades everyone and does it quickly, has no patience, and you can always tell when he's ready to move on because the player is like turns 24 or something. He's like the Leonardo DiCaprio of our hockey league. He needs the young players. I traded, I think, Mika Zibanejad and something else for Jack Hughes when Hughes was 21, just before he broke out. So I tried to get Quinn, get the brother connection. Did not work out. And I'm more mad about that than anything he's done this year. I think he's been amazing, obviously. And I think we can all agree he has never played at this level for this consistently. And that it was okay to have him in Tier 3B before the season, and definitely less okay the more he does this.
So I wanted to ask you, Dom, if you were to do player tiers again right now, where do you think Quinn would slot?
Like, I think he would definitely be in Tier 2. You at least have to flip him with Rasmus Dahlin, because I think before the season started, a lot of people trusted what Dahlin did last year more than Hughes. I think both of them, they're sort of points guys on defense, and there's nothing against that. I think it's important to produce offense from the back end. There's value in that, but the public tends to overrate that compared to a lot of models, even my model, which uses points, and they overrate that relative to a lot of the analysts who work for teams right now and who have models that are, I guess, more, I'm not sure the word, they have better data, obviously, because they have tracking data. They can look at different things and look at the things that lead to actually creating an offense outside of points. And if you look at Corey Schneider's tracking data from before the year started, Quinn Hughes didn't look as good as anyone in Tier 2, didn't look as good as Makar Fox in Tier 1. And I think this year that has changed, where he is become a huge focal point of the offense, in, not to say that he hasn't been before, but just to this elite level that would put him with the Tier 2 guys and surpassing some of them to date so far.
Dom, we reference your model a lot. You know, it's in every athletic article, is what I always like to say to Harmon. But can you just explain kind of what goes into your model? Because we've seen its use before, but like what goes into your model, just for our listeners who maybe don't know what it is?
Basically, it's a combination of all the things that many people already use. It's just putting it together into one neat little package. So you have, I think the way I like to explain it is that it tries to combine production with play driving. So on one side, you have how many points a player gets. Goals are worth more than first assists. First assists are worth more than second assists. And you also add some ability to generate expected goals yourself. So someone like Brady Tkachuk, maybe he's not a great finisher, but the fact he's getting all those chances, he gets a bit more credit for that. And then there's the play driving aspect, where it is what happens while you're on the ice, and you try to do everything you can to put that into context, whether that is using relative metrics, using quality of competition and teammate adjustments to sort of get the right ballpark. And it's also not forgetting what actually happens out there. There's a lot of people who only use expected goals for on-ice metrics, and I think that can mislead you, because there are a lot of times where over a large enough sample, you will see players outperform expected goals, especially offensively, but sometimes even defensively. I think one example is the Devils, where they have Jonas Siegenthaler and John Marino. And if you look at just XG, you're like, Siegenthaler is the better defenseman. Why isn't he being used to shut down top competition or whatever? And Marino has had a trend where every year his goals against numbers are better than his expected goals against numbers, and Siegenthaler is the exact opposite. So there might be something there where the expected goals models aren't factoring that in, and I include that for offense and defense.
I'm glad you sort of referenced that, on an individual player level, that expected goal models aren't always perfect. There's been a lot of regression talk with the Canucks lately, and I think Canucks fans know that, hey, this isn't a team that by the end of the year is probably going to be competing for the top of the Western Conference crown. But I think people are still optimistic this is going to be a playoff team. And there's been a lot of talk, and you wrote an article earlier today sort of referencing this as well, is looking at how much of a disparity there is between the Canucks' goal differential versus their expected goal differential. But one aspect that I think has sort of flown under the radar is if you look at some of the other sort of metrics that look at how the Canucks are controlling even strength play, namely shot volume, Corsi, whatever you want to call it. Canucks actually rank 11th in the NHL in that sort of department. Do you think that is being sort of discussed or weighed enough? Because it feels like everybody's talking about expected goals. Canucks don't look great. But I'm also seeing, especially in a small sample size, some of these shot volume metrics, which shine a much more positive light on the team's performance so far.
Yeah, maybe. I really it depends on what tools you use. And obviously, 15 games in, there's going to be a lot of different ways to look at things. And it's why I usually just go with the old model, which I will remind people had the Canucks at 60% to make the playoffs before the year started. And I had so many comments saying, "What do you mean you think the Canucks are better than the Kraken?" I'm like, that's what the model said. You make some good points, but I don't know. I'm going to stick with that. And the Canucks, I think, after their first win where they won 8-1, I fed that one game to the model and it shot them up a lot. And I think it pointed to a signal of what this team can do, which is score and save above expectations. I think there's a limit to that, and that's where the regression talk comes in. I think some people get it misconstrued, where as soon as you hear regression, you think, oh, you think our team sucks. You think they're going to be bad. You think this hot streak means they're going to have a cold streak. And none of that is true. It's just that what the Canucks are doing is exceptionally rare, and that sort of thing doesn't last. But they're the kind of team that can do it to a smaller degree. And going forward, that's closer to what I expect than what they're doing now. And I think the big thing is that even if they regress, they're not regressing to like a 70-point team or an 80-point team. Like I think they're a 95, 100-point team in that ballpark. So that's what I expect going forward, rather than their current pace of 130 points or whatever it is. And that's the regression talk, where they've banked enough points that the playoffs aren't, I think, what you should be wondering about. I think they're pretty safe there. I think they have a 96% chance according to my model this morning. And the bigger thing is, have they banked enough points to maybe make a realistic threat to the division? Because the other thing with all this regression talk and Canucks being above expected is that the team they're challenging is the same. I think Vegas has done that during the playoffs, so maybe there's a bit more belief they can do it, but they've had the same type of underlying process. And I think I'm lower than Vegas than the betting markets are, and higher on the Canucks than the betting markets are, but it's just not as high as I think some Canucks fans want me to be, where they want me to tweet every day at 1 a.m. that the Canucks are a wagon that are never going to lose. And it's just about being a little realistic about what the team can be, because I think we've all seen this film before, where a team gets off to a hot start and you wonder, what are they really? And for the Canucks, if they keep playing like they did yesterday against the Islanders, then they can be like a legit contender. Right now, I think they just have potential to get there, but they should be a playoff team, no doubt.
Dom, is that the Daily Bugle set behind you?
Sure is. I don't know which way to turn. Yeah, I've got the Daily Bugle. We got the Jazz Club beside it.
Nice. I thought it was the Jazz Club. I didn't want to misspeak, but I thought it was that.
One of the reasons I got the Daily Bugle is because you can actually connect it with those modular buildings.
Yes.
So got a nice little neighborhood cooking up back there. Call it Canucks Street. Got everyone living rent free over there.
Yeah, you gotta get the Avengers Tower next. Dom, thanks for doing this, man. Much appreciated.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime.
Thanks, Dom.
Dom Luszczyszyn of The Athletic. And he missed my question at the start, which I feel bad about, but it was a great question. I wanted to know. You gotta text him about it. Ask him if he knows that there's a YouTube video of him pronouncing his own name. Because
He must know.
we're in the office. I was like, okay, he's your coworker. How do I pronounce his name? You're like, I think there's something on YouTube. And we went looking and we found it. And it was him pronouncing his name. And my criticism was that it sounded like he pronounced it 3 different ways in all of those videos.
It was close enough.
It was close enough, but you should have some, it should be the same when you say your. Anyways,
I've got a keyboard shortcut for his name.
I know
Tom
you
actually
do.
knows this because, especially having to reference his model a lot in my articles, I have no clue how to spell his last name besides like Lus, and then just smashing my keyboard.
I just learned Brustevich. Like I know how to spell Hunter Brustevich. Like I could do it off the top of my head, no problem. I can't do Dom's
It's
name.
just more efficient for me to be like Dom's and then spacebar, and then my keyboard just autofills his last name in. Efficiency, baby.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, our thanks again to Dom Luszczyszyn for joining us on today's episode.